Hello and welcome to Smaulgld. In case you missed it, top gold and silver stories for the week ended April 16th, 2017. Trump flips, flops, and bombs. Lots going on in the presidential arena. Trump's actions contradict campaign promises. Do recent presidential actions and statements reflect a change in strategy, a compromise, or just a deal maker in action? Gold and silver prices rose as U.S. mint sales grinded to a halt this month so far. We're going to go through the American Silver Eagle, American Gold Eagle, American Gold Buffalo, and America the Beautiful silver coin sales, and they are atrocious, especially given the excitement in the gold market and silver markets as the price of both silver and gold are on the rise. Sales are not just plummeting, they're just not happening basically at all. Also, we've got a story on silver eagles unmasked. We're going to get to that. And we're going to get to a lot of gold and silver stories, so buckle up. Here we go. So the top story of the week was basically some of the actions that Donald Trump took. He flipped, flopped, and bombed. He took military action against Syria the prior week with those Tomahawk missiles. He dropped the massive ordnance air blast, or the mother of all bombs, on Afghanistan. And then South Korea attempted a missile launch. Now, Donald Trump's actions, one of the things that we've been talking about for months now and how they impact the gold market is, I had said that he would be volatile and that would be good for gold because uncertainty is never liked by markets. Markets convinced themselves that Trump was going to be all these things. They were all good. There were going to be tax breaks. There was going to be health care revival, elimination of Obamacare, and stock market reacted to that. And gold went down when he got elected once the traders bought into that narrative. But nothing is simple in Trump land. Trump is always looking for the next deal, and that next deal could be an entire 180 from his prior positions, or at least what people expected him to do. So just in the recent week, we've had a number of kind of surprises, not just the military actions, which goes against his America first. Why are we going into these countries? We're not taking the oil. Maybe he's going in there to take the oil. Who knows? Maybe he's not going in there. Maybe he's just doing these precision strikes, and that'll be the end of it, just to appease the neocons. I don't know. You guys can give me your opinion. I know a lot of people get angry when you suggest an opinion, and a lot of people are certain. They know exactly what's going on. They know who Trump is. They know who the neocons are, Zion, whatever it is. They insist they know the lay of the land. I say I don't know. I follow it. I try to make sense of it, and then I try to make analysis as to what might happen in the gold or silver markets based on what I see happening. But I have no horse in the game, horse in the race here. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. So some of the things that Trump seems to have reversed himself on was NATO. Now, he never said he was against NATO. I think he said he was against that the NATO people weren't paying their fair share. But it kind of sounded like on the campaign trail he was against NATO as somewhat being obsolete. And now he says, no, he thinks it's no longer obsolete. He also had vowed to label China a currency manipulator. They've been ripping us off for years by manipulating their currency lower. And now he says he's not going to label China currency manipulator. Now, this one makes sense because, as we'll see in a tweet below, if he wants to assist, he wants to enlist China's help with South Korea, and also with some, we'll get to in a future podcast, in kind of helping to drive a wedge between China and Russia to kind of slow down their plans. He probably doesn't want to bother them on the currency manipulation. So just because somebody changes their position doesn't necessarily make it bad. However, when one takes a series of changes, it looks like they've abandoned their entire political philosophy. However, Donald Trump doesn't have a political philosophy to abandon. So he's always going to change his mind, always going to be looking for the next deal. And as I say, that makes him in some respects dangerous to the markets, and that is good for gold and silver because you just don't know what he's going to do. However, changing one's mind on an area to be strategic sometimes does make sense. So when I maybe perhaps applaud or agree with something Donald Trump does, that doesn't mean that I agree with everything he does. And I think people are in this black and white camp on Donald Trump where you have to be totally against everything he does. He's the worst person ever. And if he says it's noon and it is noon, no, it's not. Donald Trump said it can't be right. And then there's other people who Donald Trump totally abandons a campaign promise, and the apologists say, no, that's a good thing because he's really what he's doing, what he meant to do, and no matter what he does, he's right. I don't take that opinion on Trump either. I just try to analyze what he's doing. So he says NATO's no longer obsolete. Okay, that's no skin off of my nose. I don't care whether he likes NATO or doesn't like NATO, but he did say it was obsolete. Now he's saying it's no longer obsolete. China won't be labeled a currency manipulator is another one. Okay, maybe it makes strategic sense not to place that tag on them right now. But here's one that should interest us all. Won't rule out a second Yellen term. Okay, now Janet Yellen, for most people who follow this channel, most people who follow the gold and silver markets, are not fans of the Fed, have not been fans of the Federal Reserve presidents, going back to Greenspan, with the low interest rates, Bernanke with his zero interest rates and QE, same with Yellen. These people have not been popular with the gold and silver crowd, although they do give impetus for higher gold and silver prices because they increase the money supply and they keep interest rates low, and relative interest rates, real interest rates, are low as well. So in a sense, while we may dislike their policies, that drives you into the arms of gold and silver. But for Trump to say that he's not going to rule out a second term, when he had called her disgraceful during the campaign, he had said what she's done, she should be ashamed of, that keeping rates artificially low is a bad thing, that she's created a bubble. Now that he appears to be the beneficiary of it, in the sense that the stock market's still heading higher, he says he's not sure. He might reappoint her. He likes her, he says. Now, of course he likes her, because he also came out this week, as we'll see later, and said that the dollar is too strong. Okay, that's good for gold too, because if he wants a weaker dollar, well, by definition, gold goes higher against the dollar. So if he starts buttering up to her, and one of the things I had mentioned in a couple of podcasts ago was that Janet Yellen probably was going to be her own woman during her last 18 months, because she'd probably written off being reappointed. Well, now that Trump is dangling out the possibility that she might keep this cushy job, that she could just sit there and give boring press conferences and get paid for it and have half the world listening to her, well, now she may decide, hey, I don't need to raise rates. I can come up with reasons why inflation isn't high enough and why we need to remain highly accommodative. And, the GDP isn't doing very well the first quarter. Yeah, it's noise, but the second quarter doesn't look too well. So maybe we hold off on interest rates and maybe I get myself reappointed. Well, that's another one of Donald Trump's reversals. Then he starts saying he's in favor of the Import-Export Bank. So Donald Trump has proven that basically you can only take what he says at face value when he says it. And he means it at the time, but situation change in a couple of days, a few weeks, a few months, and that is not written in stone. So that is going to be, has already been a hallmark of his presidency and will continue to be. And you can assign whatever motive you wish. I could care less what the motives are, whether it's because he's compromised, whether because he's a neocon in disguise, or he's always a neocon, he's a Zionist, he's a nationalist. I don't care what he is. I look at it as, whatever the reasons, he is a type of person. He's either susceptible to changing his mind, he views it a good thing to change his mind, he views it as a negotiating tactic, but he's always looking for the next deal, and that is going to keep everyone on their toes, including the markets. So who would have thought that he'd come out and be singing Janet Yellen's praises, and that might cause Janet Yellen to start cooing more like a dove. All right, let's get to the gold and silver stories. Gold and silver closed the week up 2.7% at 1287. Right now it is about 6 o'clock Eastern time, and gold is up another $6 to $1,293 on Easter Sunday evening, April 16th. Silver also closed up 3.1% to 1851, and it currently is at $18.58. Normally I do this podcast in the morning, but today I'm doing it later in the day, so you're getting a live update on the gold and silver prices. That took the gold and silver ratio down just below 70 to 1 to 69.41 at the end of the week. Still relatively elevated. And as we see tonight, gold is up 0.5% and silver is up just 0.32%. So I'd imagine the gold silver ratio is back up above 70 to 1. Now, tweet of the week. We did a poll last week and we had asked, and two of you poll takers, Smaulgld poll takers, got this one right. I asked, why did Donald Trump change his stance on Syria? And two of you said the pictures of the gas attack broke his heart. We learned during the week that Eric Trump, son of Donald Trump, said President's decision to strike Syria was influenced by Ivanka, who was heartbroken by chemical attacks. So congratulations to those two Smaulgld poll takers who got that one right. Most of you thought he was told what to do. My thought was it was a combination. He was told what to do, but also he was offered a deal that they would drop this Russian stuff and kind of exonerate him, which wouldn't be too hard to do. Maybe they go after that Schiff guy, and they give him a clean bill of health, and then he can say whatever he wants about how wonderful he is and how he's draining the swamp. But meanwhile, in exchange for that, he has to do these bombing campaigns. But the people who called it were those who said, if we're to believe Eric Trump, that what motivated it wasn't any of the deals. It was just he was kind of taken by Ivanka's heartbrokenness and decided that's why he had to drop the bombs. Interesting. I don't believe that's the case, but I threw it out there as a possibility, and two people selected it, and that was Eric Trump's view. One thing also we talked about last week, I talked about it in my own podcast, and I also mentioned it on my X22 Report Spotlight interview with Dave last week, was this concept that many of you are aware of, that China and Russia are talking about creating some type of gold payment standard. And that got a lot of play, not just from my end, but it was also an SGT report. That story made the rounds, and that's a potentially big deal. However, I think that part of the reason that the United States is working with China and kind of against Russia is to drive a wedge between those two countries. Russia has never been a historic ally of China. Even during the communist days, during the Soviet Union, they were never buddy-buddy. And Nixon went there to China and kind of set up what we have now is this relationship with China, where it's in China's interest to work with the United States to make products, manufacture, export them to the United States, buy treasury bonds. I'm going to do a whole podcast on this during the week. But for those people who think that Russia and China are now marching hand in hand down the golden path, where they're going to be trading in gold and they're going to shun the dollar and the BRICS are going to get together and push out the United States. Remember, the United States' #1 strategic asset probably is, other than its military, and they use them in conjunction, is the dollar. So anything the United States can do to keep that dollar, they're going to do. And that's why I think you're seeing the overtures to China. I mean, you had Trump sitting with the Chinese premier, eating chocolate cake like John and Yoko during the bombing attack of Syria. So I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see greater relations between the United States and China, and I think it'll be partially to drive a wedge between Russia and China. Again, we'll have a full podcast on that later in the week. And here's just basically Trump saying NATO's no longer obsolete. What's next? Nation building works. Obamacare is not a disaster. We don't need no stinking wall. That could end up being the case. I mean, the Obamacare replacement was not repeal and replace on day one. Didn't happen. What they attempted to replace it with was basically Obamacare. And now we're talking about maybe we don't see the wall. Maybe we'll just hear Trump saying the progress he's making on immigration, and there might not ever be a wall. But this tweet by Trump, this one I think is strategic. I don't think it has anything. I think it's a good part of his deal making. Not all of his deals. Some of his deals, I think, are just deals to be deals, and they may be political. They may not have the right motive behind them. But this one, he says, "Why would I call China a currency manipulator when they are working with us on the North Korean problem?" That is dead on accurate. There is no point in aggravating them. I mean, that currency issue has been around for years. It doesn't need to be addressed immediately, and there is an immediate issue with North Korea. There are shorter term issues with China's relationship with U.S. treasuries, with the dollar, with Russia, and so on. So there's no point in, even though he said it on the campaign trail, that he needs to label him a currency manipulator. Now, this is different than him saying on the campaign trail that as soon as he gets elected, he's gonna launch a special prosecutor against Hillary Clinton and have her thrown in jail. Then he turns around and says, "Well, she's nice people and she suffered enough." That's different. But again, that could be strategic too, because he can hang that over her head if she ever decides to run again. So who knows what Donald Trump thinks, why he thinks a certain way. But sometimes I give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. It may be a change in position, but I think it's a good one in this case to work with China and put the trade issue on the back burner for now. So here's some of the stories we covered during the week. The People's Bank of China added no gold to reserves in March. So if you look here on this chart, we covered this earlier. You can go to the blog post, you can click on the link, you can see the YouTube on it, but they haven't increased their gold reserves in 5 months. And a lot of you say, "Oh, but China is adding gold." No, we're talking about the People's Bank of China. Of course, China is adding gold. It's all in the blog post. It's all in the YouTube video about all the gold that goes into China. There's far more gold in China than is on the People's Bank of China's balance sheet. It's just not going into the People's Bank of China, and the People's Bank of China has also lost $1 trillion worth of reserves overall. So there is definitely not the acquisition desire on the part of the People's Bank of China right now. The number one bank in the world for acquiring gold is Russia, and Russia, China, and Kazakhstan are really the only three central banks that are getting gold, adding it to the reserves, and all three of them are major gold producers, and basically they're buying their own supply, which means there's less supply for the rest of the world. There's me on X22 report. You can check that out at the link below where the podcast is, the YouTube is embedded into the blog post, or you can go over to X22 and check it out. Indian gold imports surge. These are the February numbers. They're really good. The supposed unofficial March numbers are even better. Indians are returning to gold. However, they are not returning to silver. You'll see that also during the week. We covered blog posts and YouTubes on that. Tank collectors find $2 million worth of gold in a gas tank. The gas tank was in a tank of a gas tank. It was in a gas tank of a tank, and they had bought an old these two English guys, they run a tourist attraction where you get to ride in tanks around England that used to be used in battle. They refurbished them, and while they were fixing this one up, they found $2 million worth of gold in the gas tank. Very interesting story. Click on the link and check that out. Other stories about Hong Kong gold, Dubai gold. Another story about India losing its gold fetish. Not so sure about that. India has the same issue with the government. The government hates the fact that their citizens like gold. So their mainstream media is always trashing gold. They're always trying to make it sound like Indians don't like gold anymore. They don't want gold anymore. They should buy these Indian rupee bonds where you turn your gold in and you get a bond. So I kind of take these articles the same way. They're like, this is from the Hindu. I don't know if they're one of the bigger offenders, but a lot of the Indian mainstream media is no different than CNBC when they talk about gold. Here's a story from SRS Rocco. U.S. gold bullion exports to Hong Kong surge, 82% of total shipments. He goes through why and what that may mean. Now, U.S. Mint sales. Poor sales continue. Actually worse. So the U.S. Mint is sold, I think there were two reports during the week. This is the first one, but the second one didn't increase much. There's only 380,000 American Silver Eagles sold through the first 2 weeks of April, and only 2,500 American gold eagles. I think about 2,000 worth of American gold buffaloes, and only about 10,000 or 12,000 of the latest America the Beautiful Frederick Douglass coins. So really, the sales are just atrocious. They're like 10, 15-year lows. These are at lows before the financial crisis. We haven't seen months like this. Now, if you're interested in buying, by the way, if you're listening to this on Sunday evening, one of the things, I don't know if you know this, but the online bullion dealers keep the price from Friday over the weekend. So you think they're exposed to if the price rises, they sell it to you at the lower price. But they sell what the online bullion dealers do is when they buy their inventory, they sell it short immediately, a corresponding amount. So they don't really care that the price goes down. They're not going to lose money on the coin because of their short position will properly hedge them. So they're looking to get the sales done. It's not like they don't lose money. They make money on the volume, not on the price increase. Because if you think about it, if a coin dealer, especially the last 4 years, if every time they bought inventory and they had to sell it to you at the spot price plus the markup, let's say they buy it at $25 an ounce, and then the price goes to 22, they got to sell it to you at 22, but they pay 25. Now that everything works out because they short their gold. So if the price goes up, they get paid. If the price goes down, it's to them, they just want the volume. They're not looking to make the price appreciation or on the price of silver or gold, and they're not so concerned. They're not concerned if the price goes down as long as they're properly hedged. So you can buy, if you were to buy, let's say if you saw a big surge on a Sunday night, you could still buy at Friday's prices. And you could do so through the Smaulgld site, through the links below. Smaulgld gets a small commission if you do buy gold or silver through Smaulgld. It's one of the ways that Smaulgld keeps the lights on at the website. And you pay no more, no less than if you visited the sites directly. It's not an investment advice to buy gold or silver, but if you are interested in buying gold or silver, please check out the links. There's a number of affiliates: BGASC, JM Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, Golden Eagle Coins, SD Bullion. You can compare prices and shipping, make your choice, and make your purchase that way. Okay, let's see what else we got during the week. There's all your banners to purchase. As I mentioned, Indian silver imports failed to improve post-demonetization, highlighting once again that silver is not a substitute for gold. Not in India, it's not. Now, American silver eagles unmasked. This is a quick one for you coin collectors. For those of you who buy American silver eagles, either slabbed in the graded coins or the proof coins. Interesting story about American silver eagles. Now, for a period of time, American silver eagles were made been made exclusively. Let's check out the article here. They were made exclusively since 2001 in West Point. I believe that was the year that they decided they were going to make starting in 2001, U.S. Mint shifted the entire production of American silver eagle coins to West Point. And that was where they were going to be. And the only ones that had the mint mark, W, or the special proof and collector editions of the coin. And there would be a W next behind the, let's see if I have a picture. Do you have a picture of it here? Yeah, you see that W there? It would be down there. Well, in 2014 to 2017, the U.S. Mint realized, especially in January, that there was a big bottleneck where they had to produce a lot of coins because January was a huge month the last few years. And so they decided to take some of the production and put it over to their other mints. And they would put it to Philadelphia or San Francisco. Now, because the standard bullion coin does not have a mint mark, you didn't know, and you didn't know how many, and you didn't know which coins were made in Philadelphia, West Point, or San Francisco. But you knew they were being made there, but you just didn't know which ones they were. Well, I think it was Coin World. Yeah, this article is from BGST, but the Coin World did a Freedom of Information Act asking the U.S. Mint on information on not just the number of coins that were made, but they were trying to figure out, could they find out not just how many were made in each of the different mints, but could they identify the mints? And they got serial numbers, and they're able to find out that during the past few years that there was a certain number of coins made in Philadelphia and a certain number made in San Francisco, as well as West Point. And they're able to identify them either by serial numbers on the boxes or the straps around those monster boxes of silver eagles. And so what the coin rating companies, NGS, and also the other one is PGSC, they decided, PCGS, Professional Grading Coin Service, and Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, if they have these boxes and they're able to identify them as such, they are now willing to identify the coins as being from either Philadelphia, West Point, or San Francisco, and slab the coins and grade them appropriately. Now, the Philadelphia coin is interesting because I think in 2015 they made 79,000 there. It's a big deal because that's very few. So coin dealers are now selling these slabbed coins from NGC and PCGS, and also the San Francisco is relatively rare too because there were just 3 years where they were making the coins in San Francisco. So they're now able to identify them. That is your Silver Eagle Unmasked story for the week. Another story: silver circuits on foil allow curved touchscreens, which is quite interesting. Here's the other sales update. Again, very poor during the week. No platinum eagle coins have been sold since the beginning, the early part of the year. American gold buffaloes are at 1,500, and just sold 500 that one day. So basically, almost no gold sold whatsoever. On the 12th, Trump said dollar was getting too strong. That led to the recent couple of day upsurge in the price of gold. Also on the 12th, we did a story on how JP Morgan and HSBC control, not necessarily own, vast amounts of physical gold and silver. You can check those stories out. You can go to the blog post and see the charts, or you can go to the YouTube and check that out. Now, when you go to the YouTubes, on all these YouTubes, it's often best to go and open up another browser and follow along. You can see the charts a lot better on the Smaulgld website. Here we go. Here's a live chart of gold and silver. You can see tonight it went up to 1292. It's actually at 1293. I haven't refreshed the screen in a bit. And here you are. Here's just the final up to the minute, up through April 15th. American silver eagles just 380,000 halfway through the month. You know, at that pace would be well under 1 million, well under 800,000. And American gold eagles, 2,500. I mean, they'll sell 5,000 1-ounce American gold eagles this month at that pace, and they'll sell 4,000 American gold buffaloes. Very small numbers. You can donate to Smaulgld via Bitcoin. Appreciate those who have done so. You can also donate via PayPal, or you can become a patron. I only have one Patreon. God bless that person. They have signed up, and $1 a month. So Smaulgld has his first Patreon. All right. Interesting story. Chinese archaeologists retrieve 10,000 gold and silver sunken relics linked to leader of ancient uprising. Click on that link. You'll see some very, very interesting pictures. U.S. economic data. Again, consumer sentiment is high. PPI slowed down a bit, as did the CPI this week. More reasons for the Fed or to have cover, not to raise rates. Their inflation is not going the direction that they wish it to go. This story is very interesting. Is the price of gold following a pre-vertical pattern? If you check out the charts, I'm not going to look at them here. You go to the blog post. You can see Nick Laird over at ShareLinks put together some charts that show a comparison between the 70s bull market and the most recent bull market. And if everything follows the way the charts have been following, we're in this kind of low period, and then in a year or two you get this kind of vertical move higher. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just pointing out that there are charts that indicate so far we're on that kind of preset path, but of course anything can happen. And there's your CPI data. As I mentioned, the CPI actually was down, as was the core CPI. So another reason not to raise interest rates. And then finally, yesterday we put out our fifth in a series of the CIA and gold. We are reviewing the CIA's recently declassified documents on gold and getting their points of view on how they viewed the gold market. There is a playlist on YouTube. You can check it out. Also at the bottom of each CIA Smaulgld blog post, there is a link to the archives so you can check out all of the past CIA and gold memorandum and analysis of those. That about does it for the week. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you very much for listening.